Good morning and welcome back to Bonsai by the Sea. Well, it's a beautiful September morning here, and if you've ever thought about visiting Nova Scotia, I highly recommend the month of September. It's really some of our best weather, and we've got 5 days coming up of beautiful sunshine. So this video is going to be the 7 questions challenge started by Expressions of Grace Bonsai. And it's designed to help us all get to know each other better. So I am a 5th generation Texan, and I'm proud of my Texas heritage. So I want to give you some background on it. On my mother's side, my great-great-grandfather was named John Wesley de Vilvis, and he was a saddle maker. He had a homestead on the Ohio River. When he heard the calling of the church, and agreed to be a circuit rider for the Methodist Church. And so he made the journey to Texas, and they gave him all a covered wagon and all the provisions they needed. And one of the things they gave him was a bell so that they could have their church services and call the people in. So he ended up on the San Antonio River and threw his rope over a cypress limb, and he founded the little church of La Villita there, which is a big tourist attraction now, just walking distance from the Alamo. And he also founded Travis Park Methodist, where he was the minister for many years, until he eventually got run out of town for letting the Mexicans sit in the services with everybody else. So even back then, the racism was alive and well. And he ended up south of San Antonio and founded a church in a place called Oak Island, and that's where he's buried now. So on my father's side, he was from a little town outside of Waco called Frost, and he was a Texan from birth, and he his name through immigration had been shortened from Denenberger to Den. So that's how we ended up with the name of Den. And even though my name is James Den, the de Vilvis blood runs strong in me from my mother. And I've always been into making things. I've been a carpenter, a musician, and cabinet maker, and I've always had a shop, and I've always loved to create things. So that kind of gives you some background on how my family got to Texas. And I was born in 1960, so I was a child of the 60s. And San Antonio was a very different town then, much smaller than it is today. It's had a huge population explosion. So that's enough about me. So the next question is, what was my first tree? So I had a lot of influence by a man in UK who we all know, Peter Chan, and his first video that inspired me was the Alberta spruce upright. So my first tree is right over here. It's not Yamadori. We went to the big box store and got this Alberta spruce. And I was also watching a lot of concrete pot making. So this pot is the first one that I got together and put that Alberta spruce in it, and that was my first introduction to bonsai. And this was back right before the pandemic started. But I'll give you some more info on that when we get to another question. So the next question is, what is your favorite tree and why? So I have a lot of trees, and today this one is my favorite. This tree has had just amazing character right from the time I pulled it out of the ground. And we nicknamed it the ballet dancer because of what's going on down here with the look of legs and the movement in it. So I'm very attached to this tree, and will always keep this one. If you've seen my first video, you've seen my top 10 trees, and I kind of have a business plan for those trees to develop them for 10 years and then sell them. So this one I'm very attached to, and we'll always have around. So the next question, of course, is what is your worst bonsai? So let me put this one down. And one thing you have to realize, if you're going to start collecting trees, they're not all going to make it. And I've learned that the spruce trees are a breed that sometimes they can fool you and make you think that they're feeling fine and everything is great. I even featured this tree in a video. I had high hopes for it, but obviously it didn't make it. And that's part of Yamadori. They're not all going to make it. So there you go. That's my worst bonsai today. So how did I start in bonsai? Well, I'm very much a product of the pandemic, because I've been a market farmer here in Nova Scotia for 10 years. We bought our place here, and my plan was to grow food, and I've always been very driven to grow food. And we were in Puerto Vallarta celebrating my 60th birthday, and the pandemic was just nipping at our heels. It was March, and we were heading back to Canada, and right about the time we got here, they announced that there was going to be no markets to sell food. So it was really strange that it happened right at the time when it was time to plant everything. So I didn't really know what to do, because I had all this infrastructure of greenhouses that I had built, and there was no reason to plant all the usual food that I usually plant and grow every year. So I started watching YouTube a lot, like we all do, and I found Peter Chan and Heron's Bonsai, and it was life-changing for me to see these trees and realize that I could create things like this, and it could be a really good thing to pursue. And one day I was watching Peter, and he was explaining Japanese terms and what the word Yamadori meant. And up to this point in my life, I had never heard that word, and I didn't know anything about it. But of course, it's collecting trees from nature and turning them into bonsai. So I had to watch that video a couple of times, and I said to myself, well, let me get this straight. I can go in the forest and I can find trees and I can put them in pots, and they could be amazing things. So at that point, I was off and running, and before I knew it, I had collected 200 trees and was making pots every day. And now I'm responsible for well over 300 trees, and it's been a real life-changing experience, and it happened at a really good time for me because a lot of people don't realize how hard it is to be a market gardener on your body and picking food and getting it all processed. And I was right at the point in my life where I really needed something different to do, but it was kind of forced upon me because I never would have given up on growing food otherwise, and I probably never would have gotten into this. So it was just one of those times that life happened, and things just happened that way, and I got totally addicted to this through it. So that's how I got into bonsai. So that brings us to the last question, and that's what is the most you ever paid for a bonsai? And I never have actually bought a finished bonsai in a pot, mainly because I don't like the pots that are available, and I love designing my own pots, and so the most I've spent is about 50 bucks on Hinoki cypress, and the one I made in the video is right over here. It's doing very well. The moss is taken very nice on it. And it's developing just as I expected. It's a wonderful breed. So 50 bucks is the most I ever spent on this, because most of my trees are collected trees. But one of the things that happened the fall of that year that I started, we were passing one of the biggest nurseries around here called Ocean View, and the sign said 75% off all tropicals. So we were right in the parking lot, and there was 2 breeds that I bought that day that I was very lucky to acquire. And one of them is this variegated dwarf Schefflera breed. And this tree was in a plastic pot, and it was expensive. They were asking like $65 for it. So at 75% off, it might have been like 8 bucks or something. So of course we bought them all. And the other breed was this Sarissa breed. So we were very, very fortunate. I was very fortunate to get these 2 breeds because I've always loved propagating plants, and this gave me some real bonsai breeds that were worth propagating. And I think that's really important if you get into bonsai, that you don't just start propagating. Like if I would have just done a big Schefflera, it never would have been a really good bonsai breed. So I was always wondering where these trees had come from. So this one gave it away to me, because through Nigel and Jay's videos of tropical expressions, I was able to see this tree there. So I'm pretty convinced now that they all came from tropical expressions. So it was just one of those flukes that I got really lucky, because the Sarissa breed and this breed are now my staple breeds that I propagate and sell at the farmer's market. So that was a real stroke of luck for me. So one of the things I want to show you is a new pot that I've made. And I'm very excited about it. It's completely different from all of my other pots. And in the next few days, I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how I made this. And I'm very, very excited about it. I'd like to say thanks for watching and supporting the channel. And your subscription is very valuable to us. And I'll see you next time on Bonsai by the Sea.